The sky over Equilu village rumbled with distant thunder as Zuri staggered across the marble floor of the Bacoma estate, 9 months pregnant and trembling. Her swollen belly dragged low, her palms scraped against the cold tiles, and humiliation burned hotter than the pain that shot through her body. Boma towered above her, his voice sharp, merciless. "Crawl, Zuri. If you can't respect my family, then show them you know your place." Laughter erupted from the guests. Mama Decca smirked from her velvet chair, sipping palm wine like she was watching entertainment made just for her. Zuri felt her heart shatter, but deep inside, something else rose fire. She whispered to her unborn children, "One day we will rise." When the guests dispersed and the storm outside grew wild, Boma grabbed her wrist and dragged her to the gate. "You're nothing," he hissed, pushing her onto the wet ground. The rain soaked her from head to toe as the gate slammed shut behind her. Lightning flashed. Zuri clutched her belly, and she made a silent vow to return, not in tears but in power. "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now?" If you enjoy emotional African folktale dramas, feel free to subscribe and join our growing family. Zuri had always believed that marriage would be her safe haven, a place where two souls became partners, not prisoners. But the moment she married Boma Bacoma, she stepped into a world that slowly tightened around her neck like an invisible rope. At first, everything seemed beautiful. Boma was charming, wealthy, and knew exactly how to win people over with his confidence. He had promised her a new life, a comfortable home, and protection. She had arrived from a modest background, her father a retired schoolteacher, her mother a seamstress. They were not poor, but they were not wealthy either, and Boma used that difference like a weapon whenever he wished to remind her of her place. In the early weeks of their marriage, Zuri tried to ignore the cracks. She told herself that every young wife needed time to adjust. But what she didn't know was that Boma didn't want a partner, he wanted ownership. The first time he shouted at her, it had been over something small. A glass out of place, a dish that wasn't warm enough. She remembered standing in the kitchen, her hands trembling as he slammed his fist onto the counter and told her she should feel grateful. He even looked in her direction. Mama Decca had stood behind him, arms folded, eyes narrowed as if studying a housemaid who wasn't performing well enough. "You married above your level," Mama Decca often reminded her. "Be careful, or you will slip back to the mud you came from." Zuri always bowed her head, swallowing her hurt. She tried to love her husband despite his temper, despite his pride. But every day in the Bacoma household was a test to see how much humiliation she could endure before breaking. When Zuri discovered she was pregnant, she had imagined the news would soften Boma. She hoped foolishly that fatherhood would bring out a gentler version of the man she once admired. When she told him, he simply nodded and said, "Good. Maybe now you'll think before talking back." It stung, but she convinced herself that pregnancy stress could make anyone cold. Yet instead of easing her burden, Boma increased it. Suddenly, every chore was Zuri's responsibility. Mama Decca claimed her old age made her bones weak, and Boma believed her. Zuri cleaned the house from morning until late at night, cooked meals for everyone, washed dishes until her fingers wrinkled and scrubbed floors, while her belly grew heavier each day. On the nights when she collapsed into bed, her back aching, she would whisper prayers for strength. She didn't want to raise her children in a broken home. She didn't want to admit to her family that she had made a mistake. So she stayed, endured, and hoped. But Boma's cruelty didn't stop at commands. He criticized her appearance, calling her slow and lazy whenever she rested. He compared her to other women, praising their poise and beauty, while mocking her swollen feet and round belly. Some days she cried while washing clothes in the backyard, hoping no one would notice her tears spilling onto the fabric she held. The worst moments, however, came when guests visited. Boma loved putting Zuri on display like a servant for his amusement. One afternoon, when she was 7 months pregnant, he asked her to serve drinks to a group of business partners. Zuri moved carefully, balancing the tray despite the pressure on her spine. As she approached the table, one of the men cracked a joke about pregnant women being too emotional and clumsy. Boma laughed loudly, then added, "You're right. Look at mine, useful for nothing but cooking and giving birth." The men roared with laughter. Zuri stood, frozen face burning, unable to hide her humiliation. When she accidentally placed one of the glasses slightly off-center, Boma glared at her as if she had poured poison instead of wine. That night, after the guests left, he scolded her for embarrassing him. She apologized, even though she had done nothing wrong. As the months passed, Mama Decca tightened her grip on the household. She controlled the finances, decided what Zuri could eat, where she could go, and who she could speak to. She stopped Zuri from calling her parents, claiming it was inappropriate for a married woman to run to her childhood home every time she felt like crying. Whenever Zuri looked sad, Mama Decca accused her of being ungrateful. Still, Zuri tried to endure. For the sake of her unborn child. For the hope that life might improve once the baby arrived. But the day Mama Decca caught Zuri sitting down to rest for a moment, after washing clothes in the sun, everything escalated. The older woman stormed into the yard and shouted so loudly that the neighbors heard. "So you think you can relax because you are carrying my son's child? Do you want the world to feed you? Stand up. Work doesn't kill a pregnant woman. Weakness does." Zuri stood up, blinking back tears. Boma walked outside a few minutes later, and instead of defending his wife, he scolded her for disrespecting his mother. "You're becoming arrogant," he hissed. "Maybe motherhood will humble you." That was the day Zuri truly understood she was alone. As her belly grew heavy, the emotional burden grew heavier. The final straw came when Mama Decca accused Zuri of being cursed because she was gaining weight too quickly. "Some women carry evil children," she whispered one night when she thought Zuri was sleeping. "Maybe her family has bad blood." Zuri cried quietly under the bedsheet, praying the babies inside her would never feel the hatred surrounding them. But even then she tried to stay hopeful. She promised herself she would endure a little longer, just until she delivered safely. Unfortunately, Boma had no intention of showing mercy. The night he forced her to crawl before his guests was not a sudden act. It was years of cruelty finally revealing its full face. And as Zuri lay outside the gate in the pouring rain afterward, she realized something profound. Her children would never be safe in this house, and she would never be respected here. To survive, she would have to leave, no matter how painful the journey ahead. Her heart ached, her body trembled, but her spirit refused to break. She placed a hand on her belly and whispered, "I will not let you be born into darkness. I will crawl tonight if I must, but I will rise later, higher than they ever expect." With lightning splitting the sky above her and rain soaking through her dress, Zuri gathered her strength. She pushed herself up from the mud, each movement sending sharp pain across her spine. She wrapped her arms around her belly protectively and took the first step toward freedom, unaware that destiny had prepared something much greater than she could imagine. The rain was relentless, pounding onto Zuri's skin like thousands of tiny stones as she staggered away from the Bacoma estate. Her dress clung to her swollen belly, heavy with mud and water. Every step sent waves of pain through her back, but she pushed forward, refusing to collapse. Not here, not where their eyes could still watch her from the windows. She didn't know where she was going. All she knew was that she couldn't remain another second in that house of cruelty. Behind her, the lights of the mansion glowed like the eyes of a beast she had just escaped. Although the storm muffled every sound she imagined, she could still hear Mama Decca's mocking voice, Boma's anger, the cold laughter of guests who had watched her humiliation like it was entertainment. Her tears mixed with the rain as she whispered, "God, please, help me." The path leading away from the estate was slippery. Twice, she nearly fell, catching herself just in time by gripping the bushes on either side of the road. Thunder cracked, and for a moment the world turned white. Zuri gasped, clutching her stomach as the children inside her kicked in distress. "I'm sorry," she whispered to them. "I know it's cold. I know you're scared, but I need to get you somewhere safe." A contraction hit her, then sharp, sudden, terrifying. She cried out, sinking to her knees. The pain radiated down her legs like fire. She wasn't supposed to be in labor yet, not this soon. Panic seized her chest. Not now, not on the road, not alone. She tried to rise, but her legs trembled. She steadied herself on a tree trunk and pushed onward. Minutes passed like hours. The wind roared. The road seemed endless. By the time she reached the old wooden footbridge leading to the main village path, her contractions had grown closer. Sweat mixed with the rain on her forehead. She bit her lip to keep from screaming. Lightning lit up the sky again, revealing deep cracks in the planks beneath her. She inched forward, praying the bridge wouldn't collapse under her strained weight. Halfway across, another contraction gripped her stronger than the others. She doubled forward, clutching the rope railing. A strangled cry tore from her throat. "Somebody, please!" But the storm swallowed her voice. She forced herself onward, step by painful step, until she reached the end of the bridge. She collapsed onto the ground, her breath ragged, her vision blurred. She wanted to sleep, to just close her eyes and let the darkness swallow her. But she couldn't. The children inside her needed her awake. "Alive! Move, Zuri," she whispered to herself. "Move!" Drawing strength she didn't know she still possessed, she crawled onto the main road. The village was still far too far to walk in this condition. She looked around desperately, but all she saw was emptiness and rain. Then faintly through the roaring storm she saw headlights. A car. Relief and fear collided inside her. Who would be driving in this weather? What if it was one of Boma's friends? What if they took her back? She tried to stand, but her legs buckled. She could only wave weakly, praying the driver would see her. The car slowed, then stopped. For a moment, Zuri heard nothing but the hammering of her heart. The driver's door opened and a tall figure stepped out. A flashlight beam cut through the rain. The man approached quickly, concern etched across his face. "Good heavens, are you all right?" he shouted over the storm. Zuri blinked, her vision swimming. He was a stranger, middle-aged, well-dressed, with kind eyes. Certainly not someone from the Bacoma estate. She tried to speak, but only a broken sob came out. The man knelt beside her. "My name is Chinadu. Can you hear me? Are you hurt stomach? Contractions? The babies?" she managed. His expression changed instantly, urgent, protective. "God have mercy, you're in labor. How long have you been walking in this storm?" She shook her head weakly, tears streaming down her muddy cheeks. Chinadu looked around, assessing the situation. The road was too far from the hospital to walk, and the rain was getting worse. Without hesitating, he slid one arm under her knees, the other around her back, and lifted her carefully. Zuri gasped at the sudden movement, but he held her securely. "You're safe now," he said firmly. "I've got you." He carried her to the car, opened the back door, and carefully settled her inside. She squeezed his hand, overwhelmed with gratitude and fear. "Please, don't take me back to the estate," she whispered. He froze for a moment, understanding dawning in his eyes. Then he shook his head. "I don't know what happened to you there," he said softly, "but I promise you this, I will not take you anywhere you don't want to go." The words broke something inside her. She cried, really cried, for the first time in months. Chinadu started the car and sped off, his headlights cutting through the storm. Inside, Zuri clenched her fists against another wave of pain. "You're doing well," Chinadu reassured her, glancing back repeatedly. "Hold on, the hospital isn't far." But the contractions were too close now. Too intense. Another hit her stronger than before. She screamed, her voice echoing inside the car. Chinadu pressed harder on the accelerator. Rain hammered the windshield. The wipers screeched back and forth, working desperately to keep visibility clear. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Behind him, Zuri panted, her entire body shaking. They're coming now." Chinadu's heart raced. Just hold on a little longer. But Zuri knew. Her body knew. Her babies were not waiting for the hospital. They were coming here. Now. She gripped the seat, sweat dripping down her face, mixing with tears. "Please, help me," she choked out. Chinadu looked at the road, then at her. "I'm right here. I won't leave you." He drove faster. Another contraction ripped through her. Then another. Her breathing quickened. Her vision blurred. The world spun. And then, just as they reached the main junction leading into town, Zuri felt her water break. A scream tore from her throat. Chinadu swerved into the emergency entrance of St. Mercy Hospital. Before the car even stopped moving, nurses burst out through the doors, alerted by the headlights and frantic honking. "She's in labor," Chinadu shouted as he jumped out and opened the back door. "She's having multiples." The nurses rushed forward, surrounding her with urgent hands and professional movements. Zuri felt herself lifted onto a stretcher. The lights of the hospital ceiling passed above her, blurry and bright. Voices echoed around her, doctors shouting instructions, nurses rushing Chinadu, calling her name from somewhere behind. Her world was spinning. But the last thing she heard before losing consciousness was a voice, firm, gentle, reassuring. "Don't worry, madam. We're going to help you bring your children safely into this world." As the darkness closed in, she whispered, barely audible, "Please, protect them." Then she slipped under completely. Outside the delivery room, Chinadu paced anxiously, soaked from the rain, praying for a woman he had met only minutes ago, but who felt placed in his path by fate itself. Inside, Zuri fought through pain, determination, and exhaustion as her body brought forth 3 cries, 3 tiny souls, triplets, destined to change everything. Everything she had lost, everything she had suffered, everything she had been denied, was about to become the foundation of her rise. The first sound Zuri heard as consciousness slowly returned was a soft, rhythmic beeping, steady, comforting, like a heartbeat outside her own. She blinked, her vision hazy at first, the bright hospital lights gradually sharpening into focus. The sterile scent of disinfectant filled the air. Her body felt heavy, weak, but strangely light at the same time, as if something that had weighed on her for months had finally been lifted. She tried moving her hand. It trembled as it rose a few inches above the sheets before falling back. A nurse standing nearby noticed immediately and rushed to her bedside. You're awake, the nurse said gently. Thank God. How do you feel? Zuri's lips parted, but her voice was a whisper. My babies. The nurse's face brightened. They're alive. All three of them. Triplets. They're in the neonatal unit for monitoring, but they're strong. She squeezed Zuri's hand lightly. And you pulled through a very difficult delivery. But you're safe now. Zuri's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to sit up to see them, to hold them, to prove to herself that this miracle was real. But her body resisted. Her muscles felt drained as though she had run miles without rest. The nurse adjusted her pillow and said softly, You lost a lot of blood. You'll need to regain your strength before standing. But don't worry, the babies are in excellent hands. They're fighters just like their mother. Fighters, the word echoed inside her. The door opened suddenly, and Chinedu stepped in, still wearing the same soaked clothes from the storm. His face was tired, lined with worry, but when he saw Zuri awake, relief washed over him. You're back, he said, exhaling. Thank God. Zuri blinked at him, confused for a moment. You stayed. I wasn't going to leave you alone, Chinedu replied simply. Not after what I saw. Not after what you went through. His sincerity overwhelmed her. No one not in years had spoken to her with such kindness. She looked away, her lips trembling. Thank you. You saved my life. And my children's. Chinedu pulled a chair beside her bed. I only did what any decent person should do. But Zuri, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. You don't need to go back to that house, ever. A sharp pain pierced her chest, not physical, but emotional. Memories of Boma's voice, his cruelty, Mama Deka's contempt, the humiliation she faced, she wanted to bury them forever. I won't go back, she whispered. Never. And she meant it. With every breath in her weak body, she meant it. Hours later, after ensuring Zuri was stable, the nurses wheeled her into the neonatal ward. Her heart pounded as she approached the incubators. The nurse pointed gently toward the first one. This is baby A. A tiny baby lay curled up inside, wrapped in soft blankets, breathing with delicate but steady movements. Tears blurred Zuri's vision. That's baby B, the nurse said, guiding her to the next incubator. Another infant, smaller but just as strong. Zuri touched the glass, her heart melting. And baby C, the nurse finished. This one was the smallest but the loudest during delivery. Zuri let out a shaky laugh, her first real laugh in months. Joy bubbled inside her, overwhelming and healing. She leaned closer to the glass. My angels, she whispered, my miracles. Beside her, Chinedu watched in silence, moved by her tenderness. The next few days passed in a haze of recovery. Zuri's body remained weak, but her mind grew sharper. Each morning she was wheeled to the neonatal ward to sit beside the triplets. She sang softly to them, whispered blessings, and prayed for strength, for herself, and for their future. Chinedu visited every day. He brought her food, water blankets, and sometimes flowers from the hospital garden. He never overstepped, never asked for her story until she was ready. And on the 5th day, she finally spoke. With the babies sleeping peacefully beside them, Zuri told him everything, how Boma had changed after marriage, how Mama Deka poisoned the home with cruelty, how she was forced to work while heavily pregnant, how humiliation became her daily meal, and how the night of her escape nearly killed her. Chinedu listened silent, his fists clenching at times, his jaw tightening. When she finished, he said quietly, No woman deserves that. Not you, not anyone. Zuri wiped a tear from her cheek. I stayed because I believed family could heal. But he never wanted a wife. He wanted a servant. A prisoner, Chinedu corrected. You escaped a prison. Zuri's throat tightened. But now, what do? I have 3 babies. No home, no money. You have time, Chinedu said. And you have me. I'm not here to control you or replace your independence. But I won't let you face the world alone. Zuri stared at him, unsure whether to trust or to fear. But deep inside she sensed no malice, only compassion. Still she shook her head. I can't depend on you forever. I'm not asking you to, he said. I'm offering you a chance to stand again. Something inside her shifted. She felt possibility, hope, and courage. When Zuri was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later, the triplets still required careful monitoring, but they were strong enough to come home. Chinedu drove them in his SUV, the backseat filled with blankets, tiny clothes, baby bottles, and diapers items he bought without hesitation. Zuri held the babies close, overwhelmed. You didn't have to do all this, she whispered. I know, Chinedu replied. But I wanted to. Instead of returning her to the life she left behind, he drove her to his home, a modest but warm two-story house near the edge of the city. His sister Uchechi greeted them at the door. "Oh, my lord, these babies are beautiful," she exclaimed, rushing to help carry the bags. Come in, you must be exhausted." Zuri's eyes widened. I can't stay here. I don't want to invade your life." Uchechi waved her off. "Nonsense. Any friend of my brother is welcome here, and any woman who bore triplets in a storm is a warrior. You're staying. No arguments." They led her inside. For the first time in years, Zuri entered a home where she wasn't met with scowls, orders, or threats. Instead, she stepped into warmth, a living room decorated with soft colors, a kitchen that smelled of fresh bread, and voices filled with kindness instead of venom. That night, after feeding her babies and laying them in a small crib prepared for them, Zuri sat on the balcony staring at the moon. She wasn't healed yet. The wounds were still deep, the memories still sharp, but she was safe. Her children were safe, and for the first time since her wedding day, she whispered words she had long forgotten: "I have a future." Below in the quiet house, the triplets slept peacefully, 3 tiny heartbeats destined to reshape their mother's life, and one day to make the world regret ever underestimating her. The first weeks in Chinedu's home unfolded like a slow exhale after years of suffocating. Zuri found herself waking up not to shouts or slamming doors, but to the soft murmurs of morning, to the gentle cooing of her babies, to the warmth of a household that actually felt like a household. Still, the transition wasn't easy. Trauma doesn't vanish simply because kindness arrives. On her first morning there, she woke up abruptly, gasping, her heart pounding. She half expected to hear Mama Dika calling her lazy or Boma demanding breakfast. Instead, she found herself in a neatly arranged guest room, sunlight spilling through the curtains. All 3 babies slept beside her in a row of small cribs Chinedu had borrowed from neighbors. Zuri pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Freedom felt strange, almost unreal. Later that day, Uchechi taught her how to use the washing machine. Zuri stared at the buttons as if they belonged to a spaceship. She had always hand-washed clothes, scrubbing until her knuckles bruised. When the machine began its cycle on its own, she stepped back, startled. Uchechi laughed warmly. "Sister, it's just a machine. You don't have to hurt yourself to make clothes clean." Zuri smiled shyly, embarrassed by how unfamiliar comfort felt. But the nights were harder. Memories crept back in the quiet hours. Voices, insults, commands, humiliation. Sometimes she woke up in tears, terrified the gate of the Bacoma estate would open and drag her back into the nightmare. Other times she woke thinking she still had chores to complete before sunrise. One night, Chinedu heard her crying through the thin walls and knocked gently. She panicked, wiping her face. "I'm fine," she tried to say. "You don't have to pretend," he replied from the other side. "You've been pretending for years. Rest now. It's okay to feel safe." His words broke her again, but this time gently. Over time, things settled. Days became structured around feeding, changing diapers, cleaning bottles, and resting. Zuri rarely stepped outside, afraid that someone might recognize her and report her whereabouts to the Bacomas. Her escape had been dramatic. By now, the entire estate surely knew she was gone. Boma wouldn't search for her out of love, but out of control. He would want her back only to punish her for daring to leave. But in this home, Zuri slowly began reclaiming her sense of self, piecemeal, fragile but real. One morning, as she prepared porridge for the babies, Chinedu walked in with grocery bags. He placed them on the counter and pulled out a basket filled with vegetables, milk, and baby food. "I hope I'm not overstepping," he said. "I bought what I think the babies need." Zuri shook her head quickly. No. You've done too much already." "How will I repay you?" Chinedu leaned against the counter, folding his arms, studying her gently. "You don't repay kindness. You pass it on when you can." Zuri lowered her gaze. She wasn't used to generosity without conditions. She wasn't used to being seen as a person, not a possession. He continued, "But if you really want to repay me, get stronger, raise your children well, and when the time is right, stand on your own feet." Zuri's chest tightened with something she hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. "I'll try," she whispered. In the days that followed, Zuri found herself observing how the household worked. Uchechi ran a small tailoring business from home, sewing modern African dresses for clients. She was skilled, fast, precise, creative. Zuri watched silently as Uchechi cut and stitched patterns. "You like sewing?" Uchechi asked one afternoon, her fingers flying across the fabric like a hummingbird. "My mother was a seamstress," Zuri replied softly. "She taught me a little." "Would you like to learn more?" Zuri hesitated. The babies were only weeks old. Her body was still recovering. But the thought of learning a skill, something that could build a future, filled her with unexpected excitement. Yes, she said quietly. I would. Uchichi smiled. Then you will. And so a new routine began. In between nursing and diaper changes, Zuri practiced stitching on old scraps of fabric. Her fingers were slow at first, trembling from lack of confidence. But each day the lines grew straighter, the patterns grew clearer. Something inside her, something buried under years of oppression, stirred and began waking. One evening while the baby slept, Chinedu entered the workshop area and watched her sew. She didn't notice at first, too focused on the thread. You're improving fast, he said. Zuri looked up startled. Oh, I'm still learning. It's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect to be progress, he replied. She lowered the needle, her eyes softening. Thank you for giving me space to breathe, to exist. I don't know how to express how much that means. Chinedu sat on the opposite chair. You don't owe me gratitude, Zuri, but you do owe yourself forgiveness. Zuri blinked, confused. Forgive myself for what? For letting them break you for so long, he said gently. For believing you were less than you are. His words sank into her slowly, like rain settling into dry earth. Zuri swallowed thickly. I thought leaving was impossible. I thought if I just endured, maybe one day he would change. Monsters rarely change, Chinedu said quietly. She nodded. Her eyes glistened. I wanted to give my children a father, but not that father. You gave them life, Chinedu replied. One day they will know how hard you fought to protect them. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was warm, steady, filled with unspoken understanding. Weeks turned into months. The triplets Ngozi, Amarachi, and Chibuike grew stronger. Their small cries turned into curious coos. Their eyes began following movement, their fingers gripping anything within reach. Zuri adored them. She had always dreamed of being a mother, but she never imagined raising 3 at once. It was exhausting, but exhilarating. When they turned 4 months old, Zuri finally asked a question she had feared for weeks. What if Boma finds me? Chinedu paused at the doorway before answering. Then he will face me. Zuri's breath caught. You would protect us, I already am, he said simply. Tears welled in her eyes. Why? Why go this far for a stranger? Chinedu stepped closer. Because fate doesn't put people in our path without reason. And because no woman should endure what you did. Zuri looked away, overwhelmed. She wasn't ready for deeper meanings or possibilities she didn't yet understand. But his kindness was steady, never demanding, never pushing. It gave her room to rebuild piece by piece. By the 7th month, Zuri's stitching improved so much that Uchechi let her help with real orders. Zuri began sewing small accessories, headbands, baby bibs, tiny hats. Clients loved them. A few even asked for more. You have talent, Uchechi said proudly. You should consider starting something of your own one day. Zuri touched the fabric gently. The idea seemed impossible, yet beautiful. A business, she whispered. Me? Why not you? Uchechi replied. Strength isn't measured by where you came from, it's measured by what you rise from. Those words planted themselves deep inside Zuri. At night when she rocked her children to sleep, she imagined a different life. A better one. A life where she stood tall, not crawling on cold floors, not crying in the dark, not begging for dignity. A life where she created something with her own hands. A life where she could give her children the future she once thought impossible. A life where she rose slowly, quietly, powerfully, and she would soon discover that destiny was preparing the very path she needed, and that the world had not heard the last of Zuri Bokoma. Not even close. Zuri's life gradually transformed into a delicate balance of motherhood, healing, and newfound purpose. The triplets were 7 months old now, smiling, babbling, grabbing anything within reach. Their energy filled the house with a warmth that Zuri had never known growing up, and certainly never experienced in her marriage. Every morning began with soft laughter, tiny feet kicking blankets, and the 3 little faces that reminded her why she had escaped, why she had fought, why she needed to rise. But stepping into a new life did not erase the shadows of the past. It simply gave her new ground to stand on. One afternoon after feeding the babies, Zuri sat by the window practicing stitches. Sunlight spilled across the floor, and the rhythmic pull of the thread through fabric calmed her mind. She no longer flinched at sudden sounds, no longer woke up expecting Boma's voice to thunder from the doorway. Healing was slow, but it was happening. Chinedu soon noticed the way she concentrated, brows, furrowed lips pressed together, fully absorbed in the task. It was the same focus he once saw in entrepreneurs he had mentored. And something inside him began to take shape, a thought, a possibility, an idea he was careful not to voice too quickly. One evening, as Zuri rocked Amarachi to sleep, he approached her gently. "You're improving faster than I expected." Zuri smiled faintly. "Uchechi is a good teacher." "You're a good student," he corrected. She looked down shyly, brushing Amarachi's tiny fingers. Compliments still felt foreign, like clothes that didn't quite fit yet. After a moment, Chinedu cleared his throat. "Would you allow me to ask something?" Zuri looked up. "Of course. What do you want for your future?" The question froze her. She blinked, stalling for time. "My future, yes," he said patiently. "Not the baby's future. Not what others expect of you. You, Zuri. What do you want?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She had never been asked that before. Not by her parents who expected hard work. Not by Boma who demanded obedience. Not by Mama Deka who believed Zuri should be grateful, simply to breathe the same air as their family. She took a shaky breath. "I want to stand on my own, to take care of my children, to not depend on anyone." "That's a start," he said softly. "But what about your dreams, before marriage, before pain, before you forgot who you were?" Zuri swallowed hard. "My mother dreamed of opening a small workshop, a place where women could come learn and earn. Before she died, she told me I should continue what she couldn't finish." "Do you want that?" he asked. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "Who would trust a woman who has nothing?" "You're wrong," he said. "You have more strength than most people I know. You survived what would have destroyed others. You're raising 3 children alone, and you're rebuilding yourself piece by piece. That is not nothing, Zuri." She lowered her head, moved by his words. That night, after everyone slept, Chinedu sat alone in the living room staring at his phone. He scrolled through contacts, business friends, investors, suppliers. He knew people who funded startups, women, empowerment programs, craft training centers, but he didn't want to overwhelm Zuri or interfere in her journey. He wanted to support her without taking her autonomy. The next morning, he asked Uchechi to meet privately. "You've seen her progress," he said. Uchechi smiled. "She has magic in her hands. And she's gentle with clients. I've seen how women trust her." Chinedu nodded. "Do you think she could run something on her own?" "With guidance, absolutely," Uchechi replied. Then she leaned closer. "But don't rush her. She's healing. Her soul is still sore." "I know," he sighed. I want her to have choices." "And she will," Uchechi said. "But choices bloom when a woman believes she deserves them." Zuri wasn't there yet, but she was getting closer. Weeks passed. The babies learned to sit up. They discovered the joy of grabbing Chinedu's nose every time he leaned in to say hello. Zuri laughed more. Now real laughter. Not the forced, tight-smiled version she had used in the Bokoma household. One afternoon, while sewing a bright Ankara pattern headband, she noticed her hands weren't trembling anymore. The stitches were neat, clean, confident. She stared at them for a moment, realizing something profound. Her hands were still capable. Her dreams were still alive. Later that week, a neighbor named Mama Ifeoma stopped by carrying a bag of fruits. "I heard you're learning to sew," she said with a warm grin. "I have a granddaughter turning 5 next month. Can you make a small dress for her? Something simple." "I will pay." Zuri froze. "Me, make a dress?" "Yes, Mama," Ifeoma said. "Uchechi told me you're talented." Zuri turned to Uchechi in surprise. Uchechi simply winked. Zuri hesitated, nerves fluttering in her chest. I can try. That's all I ask," the older woman replied. After she left, Zuri held the fabric in her hands as though it were sacred. It wasn't the value of the cloth, it was the trust. Someone trusted her skill, trusted her work. For the first time, Zuri felt something she hadn't felt since her wedding day. Hope. She worked on the dress for a week, sewing in between feeding sessions, nap schedules, and laundry. She poured herself into the patterns, every thread, every fold, every detail stitched with determination. She wanted it perfect not because of money, but because she wanted to prove to herself that she could create something beautiful. When the dress was finally done, she handed it to Mama Ifeoma with trembling hands. The older woman examined it carefully, turning it inside out, checking the seams. Then she smiled. "Beautiful," she said. "Your hands are blessed, my dear," Zuri nearly cried. That evening when Mama Ifeoma returned with payment double what they agreed, Zuri tried to refuse. "No," she insisted. "This is too much." "It's what your work is worth," the woman said firmly. "And next month I will bring my niece. She needs a dress too." After she left, Zuri sat on the floor staring at the money. Chinedu approached quietly. "You earned it," he said. Her eyes softened. I can't believe someone wants something I made." He smiled. "Believe it. This is only the beginning." She looked at him, then really looked at him. A man who rescued her in a storm. A man who never crossed boundaries. A man who lifted her without making her feel small. She whispered, "Thank you for everything." "I'm only helping you stand," he replied gently. "Where you go after that, that will be your choice." Zuri looked down at her baby sleeping peacefully. For the first time she saw a future that belonged to her. Not borrowed, not forced, not demanded. A future she could build. A future she could own. A future where she would rise far beyond the shadows that once tried to destroy her, and she was just getting started. The sun had barely risen when Zuri quietly slipped into the small workspace at the back of the house. The babies were still asleep, bundled together like three little birds in a warm nest. She cherished those early hours, the silence, the stillness, the gentle promise of a new day, a time before bottles needed warming, before diapers needed changing, before the house filled with the noise of life. She sat at the sewing table, running her fingers over the fabrics, neatly folded by color. It grounded her, reminding her that despite everything she had endured, her hands could still create. They could still build. They could still rise. She picked up a piece of Ankara cloth and closed her eyes. She could almost hear her mother's voice behind her, warm and patient, guiding her small fingers over a needle for the first time. "Thread with intention, my daughter," her mother used to say. "Cloth remembers the hand that shapes it." Zuri inhaled deeply and threaded the needle. A knock on the door startled her gently from her thoughts. Turning, she saw Chinedu stepping in, his expression still drowsy from sleep, but carrying that familiar, steady warmth. "You're up early again," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "It's the quietest time," she replied with a shy smile. "You don't rest enough." She shook her head lightly. "I rest when the babies rest. But this is for me." Chinedu studied her for a moment, thoughtful. He didn't want to push her, but he couldn't ignore the light he saw in her eyes whenever she spoke about sewing or fabrics or the dreams she once buried. A light he wanted to help her nurture. He stepped closer. "Zuri, would you consider taking orders? Real ones. Not just small jobs for the neighbors." Zuri froze. "Orders. Like a business." "Yes," he said gently. "A small one at first. You have clients already asking through word of mouth. If we create a little space for you, just a corner in the market or even online, it could grow." Her fingers tightened around the cloth. "I'm not ready." "You don't have to be ready," he replied. "You just have to start." But starting terrified her. Dreams always had a cost, and trauma taught her that the higher she tried to climb, the harder the world pushed her down. "What if no one buys?" she whispered. "Then you try again," he said. "What if I fail?" "Then you learn." "What if," her voice cracked, "what if someone recognizes me? What if Boma hears about it?" Chinedu's expression hardened, not with anger at her, but with protective resolve. "If he ever comes near you again, he will answer to me. And to the law, you're not alone anymore." Those words, "you're not alone," carried a weight she didn't know how to hold. They felt like a shelter she wasn't sure she deserved. "I will think about it," she finally said. "That's enough for now," he replied softly. "Breakfast will be ready soon." After he left, the room was quiet again. Zuri stared down at the Ankara cloth, gently tracing the patterns. A part of her longed to step into her mother's dream, to build something that could feed her children, something that belonged wholly to her. But another part of her was still chained to fear, to memories of Boma's voice controlling every decision she made. As she stitched quietly, she didn't realize she was slowly stitching together her own courage. A few days later, an unexpected visitor arrived, a middle-aged woman wearing a bright purple head wrap and carrying a confident air. "I'm looking for the young mother who made that beautiful dress for Mama Ifeoma's granddaughter," she announced as Uchechi greeted her at the door. "That would be Zuri," Uchechi replied proudly. "Come in." Zuri stepped out with a baby balanced on her hip, her heart hammering with nerves. She didn't know this woman. What if she had ties to the Bakoma family? What if this was a trap? But when the woman smiled warmly, some of the fear eased. "My name is Madame Nkechi," she said. "I run a small boutique across town. A client showed me the dress you made, and I must say your stitching is excellent. Clean, confident, rare." Zuri blinked stunned. "Thank you, ma'am. I only did my best." "I want to place an order," Madame Nkechi said. 10 dresses to start with. If they sell well, we can discuss more." Zuri nearly dropped the baby. 10, she whispered. "Yes, and I will pay up front." Zuri's hands shook. She had never handled such a large request. She wasn't even sure she had the confidence or skill to deliver. I don't know if I can finish that many, she admitted. Take your time, Madame Ketchy replied. The world is always hungry for good craftsmanship. And you have something special. When the woman left, Zuri sat down heavily on the sofa, her entire body trembling. Uchechi rushed to her side. Sister, this is incredible. It's too much, Zuri whispered. I can't do this. It's too big. But you can, Uchechi said, and you will. You don't understand, Zuri cried softly. I've never had responsibility like this. I've never made decisions for myself. I don't know how to handle success. I don't know how to handle anything. Uchechi gently placed a hand on hers. You survived the one thing most women would never survive. You escaped a home that was trying to destroy you. You carried 3 babies to term under cruelty no one should endure, and you still found strength to learn again. If that isn't the sign of a powerful woman, I don't know what is. Zuri stared at her, tears rising. Later that evening, she shared the news with Chinidu after he returned from work. His eyes widened with genuine pride. That's amazing, Zuri. I'm scared, she confessed. What if I disappoint her? What if she regrets trusting me? Chinidu sat beside her. Fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means you care. And caring means you'll give your all. She swallowed hard. Do you really think I can do this? I know you can, he said quietly. But the real question is, do you believe it? She hesitated, staring down at her hands. The same hands that once shook while washing floors in the Bacoma estate. The same hands that had been forced to crawl on cold marble. The same hands that had prayed for freedom. Slowly she nodded. Yes, I think I'm beginning to. Then that is enough, he said. For the next weeks, the house hummed with purpose. While the babies napped, Zuri cut fabric. In the evenings after dinner, she stitched patterns. On nights when exhaustion took over, Chinidu stepped in to rock the babies so she could rest. When she doubted herself, Uchechi was there to remind her of her strength. And when she stitched the final seam of the 10th dress, something clicked inside her. She wasn't the same woman she had been months ago. She wasn't the frightened, humiliated wife of Boma Bacoma. She wasn't the powerless girl forced to crawl. She was Zuri, mother, survivor, creator. She delivered the dresses to Madame Nkechi with shaking hands. The woman inspected them carefully, and then she smiled. These will sell out, she said. Prepare yourself. Customers will want more. When Zuri stepped out of the boutique with her baby strapped in a carrier across her chest, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Real burning, life-giving pride. She was rising. Slowly. Steadily. Unstoppably. And destiny wasn't done with her yet. The news traveled faster than Zuri ever imagined. Within 2 weeks of Madame Nkechi displaying the dresses, the boutique was flooded with inquiries. Customers wanted more variety, more colors matching mother-daughter sets, tailored gowns for birthdays, even simple casual wear with Zuri's signature clean stitching. Word spread through markets and women's groups. There's a young mother making miracles with fabric. But Zuri didn't know any of this until the morning Madame Nkechi herself marched into Chinidu's home again, this time with a broad smile and 2 assistants carrying bags of new materials. Where is she? The woman asked excitedly. Zuri emerged from the back room, wiping flour from her hands. She had been preparing porridge for the babies. Madame Nkechi clapped her hands the moment she saw her. My dear, you have caused a storm. Your dresses sold out in 2 days. 2. Do you hear me? Zuri froze. 2 days, yes, the woman said, beaming. And I have more orders. Not 10 this time, 25. Zuri nearly dropped the bowl she was holding. 25. It felt impossible, terrifying, magnificent. Her breath grew shallow. I don't know if I can. You can, Uchechi said, entering from the workshop. And we will help. I'll pay you fairly, Madame Nkechi added quickly. I don't believe in exploiting talent. You will make what you can at your pace. Zuri swallowed, overwhelmed. She didn't understand why people were suddenly believing in her. She had spent so long in a world where she wasn't allowed to decide anything, not even what she ate, wore, or thought. Now the world was handing her opportunities she wasn't sure she deserved. After Madame Nkechi left, Zuri sat down, still shaking. Chinidu joined her. Are you okay? I don't know, she said truthfully. I'm happy, but scared. What if I fail? What if this is too much? What if everything collapses again? Chinidu crouched beside her chair. You're building something real, Zuri. That alone is success. And if you stumble, you won't be falling alone. We're here. We, she whispered. Yes, he said simply. You, me, and Uchechi. We will help you grow. Her eyes softened. She had never felt part of a team before. Never had a circle that lifted her instead of pushing her down. That day marked a turning point. Soon the house buzzed like a small factory. Fabric rolled across tables, sewing machines hummed from morning to night, and Zuri transformed from a timid learner into a focused craftswoman. Uchichi guided her, correcting her hand placement, teaching her stitching shortcuts, showing her how to cut fabric for speed. "You're a natural," Uchichi said one afternoon. "Your mother must have been very skilled." Zuri smiled with sadness. She was. She worked hard. She wanted to open her own shop. "Then you'll finish what she started." The word struck deep. Something inside her cracked open, something beautiful and painful at the same time. Within a month, she completed all 25 orders. Madame Nkechi sold them out even faster. Women wanted to know, who is this new designer? Where is she hiding? Some believed she was a trained professional, perhaps someone who had studied fashion design abroad. Others thought she was a well-known tailor creating under a secret name. But she remained a mystery. One afternoon, just as Zuri finished nursing the triplets, Chinadu entered holding a small package wrapped in gold paper. "What's this?" she asked. "A gift," he said. "Open it." Zuri carefully peeled back the wrapping. Inside was a sleek black smartphone, the newest model. She blinked. "This is too much. I can't accept it." "You can," Chinadu insisted gently, "and you should. If you want to build a business, people need to reach you. You need access to photos, messages, online platforms." Zuri stared at him, stunned. "Online? I don't know anything about that." "I'll teach you," he said. Her heart fluttered. Not from romance, though. Chinadu's kindness had begun to stir feelings she didn't yet know how to name, but from the overwhelming gratitude of having someone believe she could do more than survive. She could succeed. That evening, after feeding the babies, Zuri sat with Chinadu while he taught her how to navigate the phone, how to photograph her work, how to create folders for orders, how to respond politely to customers, how to set prices without undervaluing herself. "You're smarter than you think," he said, as she absorbed everything quickly. "No," she whispered. "I'm just learning to think again." "You were never allowed to before," Chinadu said quietly. She looked away, tears pricking her eyes. As the babies slept, she stayed up late, practicing photos of the dresses she made, adjusting angles, smoothing fabrics. For the first time, she saw her work through a new lens, crisp, elegant, professional. She wasn't just sewing, she was designing. Days later, Uchechi walked into the baby room and found Zuri sketching something in a notebook. "What's that?" Uchechi asked. Zuri flushed. "Just ideas." Uchechi picked up the sketchbook gently. "These are good, really good." "You think so? I know so." Zuri touched the edge of the paper nervously. She had never shown her drawings to anyone, not even her mother. They were pieces of herself she kept buried. "What if we made one?" Uchechi asked. "One of your designs?" Zuri's breath caught. "You mean test it?" "Yes," Uchechi said. "Let's see it come to life." Together they chose fabric, bright turquoise gold accents, a bold, flowing silhouette matching Zuri's sketch. For days, Zuri poured herself into creating it. Every stitch felt like reclaiming a piece of her stolen identity. And when the final dress was complete, she hung it on a mannequin and stepped back. It was stunning, modern, traditional, fierce, soft, everything Zuri was slowly becoming. Uchechi clasped her hands together. "We must show this to Madame Nkechi. She will fly." Zuri hesitated. "What if she doesn't like it?" "Then we try again," Uchechi said. "But she will like it." They wrapped the dress carefully and brought it to the boutique the next morning. When Madame Nkechi unfolded it, her jaw dropped. "You made this?" she asked Zuri. "Yes," Zuri whispered. "It's a masterpiece," the woman said. "This belongs in the front window, with your name." "My name?" Zuri stammered. "Yes, or a brand name if you prefer." Zuri swallowed. A brand, her own brand. She never imagined she could create something worthy of a label. But the moment hung before her, golden, fragile, beautiful. "What name would you choose?" Madame Nkechi asked gently. Zuri closed her eyes. Her mother's voice echoed once more. "Cloth remembers the hand that shapes it." When she opened her eyes, she breathed Emma Zuri Designs. Emma meaning beauty, grace, goodness. Beautiful Zuri, graceful Zuri. The woman she wanted to become. Madame Nkechi nodded. "Then welcome to the world, Mama Zuri Designs." For the first time in her life, Zuri felt like a real creator. When she walked home that evening, the sky glowed with warm sunset colors. She carried the empty garment bag, but her heart felt full of purpose, dignity, in a future she had crafted with her own hands. Chinedu met her at the gate and saw the light in her eyes. "How did it go?" he asked. She smiled softly. "They loved it." He exhaled in relief, and for a moment their eyes lingered warm and unspoken. Inside the house, the babies squealed, their tiny hands reaching toward their mother. Zuri lifted them into her arms, whispering, "We're getting closer, my angels, closer to the life you deserve." What she didn't know was that far away in the crumbling Bacoma estate, a storm was beginning to gather, one that would eventually force her to face the ghost she thought she had escaped. But when that day came, she would no longer be the woman they once broke. She would be the woman they could never destroy. The days that followed felt like a dream, unfolding in slow motion each dawn, bringing new pieces of a life Zuri never believed she would own. Emma Zuri Designs began as just a name spoken softly in Madame Nkechi's boutique, but within weeks it grew legs of its own. Customers who bought her dresses returned, asking for more, praising the craftsmanship, the precision, the elegance in every stitch. Some even requested appointments just to meet the mysterious designer whose hands created such beauty. But Zuri wasn't ready to be known. Not yet. Not with her past still lingering like a shadow waiting to consume her. One afternoon, while she was feeding Amarachi mashed sweet potatoes, Uchechi burst into the house breathless. "Zuri, you won't believe it." "What happened?" Zuri asked, startled. "There's a woman from the city who came to Nkechi's boutique. She runs a popular fashion page on social media, thousands of followers. She took a picture of your dress in the window and posted it. People are going crazy over it." Zuri almost choked on her breath. "What?" She posted it. "With my name?" "No," Uchechi said quickly. "She only mentioned the boutique. But your design, everyone is asking about it." Zuri set down the spoon, her heart pounding. Excitement and fear clashed inside her chest. "This is good," Zuri Uchechi continued. "Very good." "It's too fast," Zuri whispered. "I haven't even opened a shop. I don't have enough equipment. I don't know if I can keep up." "You don't need a shop yet," Uchechi said, sitting beside her. "You're still learning. But Zuri, this is a sign. People see your talent." She looked into her friend's eyes, warm, steady, encouraging. Encouragement felt unfamiliar, like a coat too soft and expensive to belong to her. That evening, as the triplets crawled around the living room, tugging at pillows and laughing, Zuri watched them with quiet wonder. She had never imagined she could feel joy again. Real joy. The kind that fills the chest until it spills into the eyes. Chinedu entered the room with his laptop and sat across from her. "I saw the post," he said. Zuri groaned. "You too," he chuckled. "It's not a bad thing. In fact, it's incredible. People are drawn to authenticity, and your design has that." "I don't know how to be a designer," she whispered. "I barely know how to sell." "You'll learn," he replied. "You've learned everything so far?" She looked down at her hands, once trembling, once bruised, once weaponless. Now they held strength she didn't know they possessed. Chinedu continued, "I think it's time you considered something bigger." Zuri's breath caught. "Bigger, yes. You've been working from this house, which is fine for now, but if orders keep growing, you'll need space. Equipment, maybe even a few assistants." Zuri laughed nervously. "Assistants, for me, why not?" he asked gently. "Why is it so hard for you to believe you deserve success?" Tears pricked her eyes. She didn't know how to answer. Trauma had carved a valley inside her, a place where confidence struggled to grow. He placed his hand over hers. "Don't let your past tell you who you are. It already lied to you once." She looked at him, his calm eyes, his steady presence, and felt her heart tremble with something she had locked away for years. Hope. That night, after she put the babies to sleep, she found herself unable to rest. Instead, she returned to the workshop and pulled out her sketchbook. She drew dress after dress, bold patterns, modern cuts, traditional motifs, blended with contemporary styles. Hours passed without her noticing. It was as if her hands had been waiting years to be free. When dawn broke, Zuri was still at the table, surrounded by sketches. Uchechi found her and gasped, "Zuri, did you draw all these last night?" Zuri's eyes were tired but glowing. "I couldn't stop. It's like all the ideas that were trapped for years are finally rushing out." "These are incredible," Uchechi whispered. "You're not just talented, you were born for this." For the first time, Zuri didn't deny it. She didn't shrink. She didn't hide. "I want to show Madame Nkechi," she said firmly. That afternoon, they carried the sketches to the boutique. The bell above the door chimed, and Madame Nkechi hurried over. "You came," she exclaimed. "I have good news. Those dresses, every last one, sold again. Customers are asking for the designer." "Some want to place custom orders," Zuri inhaled sharply. "I have something to show you." When she spread the sketches across the counter, Madame Nkechi's eyes widened. You made these? Yes. These. The woman touched one drawing reverently. These look like a collection. Something a real brand would release. Zuri's heart skipped. A collection, yes, Madame Nkechi said. Imagine this displayed on mannequins. Imagine this sold across the state. People will line up for these designs. Zuri's throat tightened. But I don't have a shop. Or money. Or leave that to me, Madame Nkechi said. I have business partners who owe me favors. Women who invest in local designers. If they see your work, they will support you. Zuri's knees nearly gave way. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, the woman replied with a smile. Say you'll let your talent reach the world. When Zuri nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks, Madame Nkechi hugged her. You have a gift, my dear. It would be a sin to hide it. That evening, when she returned home with swollen eyes and trembling hands, Chinadu rushed toward her. What happened? Are the babies okay? Zuri let out a shaky laugh. They're fine. I'm fine. It's just everything is happening so fast. She told him about the new orders, about Nkechi's excitement, about the idea of a full collection. Chinadu didn't interrupt. He simply listened, eyes shining with pride. When she finished, he softly said, Zuri, you're becoming unstoppable. She covered her face with her hands. I'm scared. What if I lose everything again? You won't, he said gently. Because this time you're not building your life in someone else's house. You're building it with your own hands. She felt his truth settle deep within her. You know, he continued, the first time I saw you that night in the storm, I saw a woman who looked broken. But now, he paused, his voice thick. Now I see fire in your eyes. Her breath caught. You're rising, Zuri, whether you realize it or not. She looked away, heart pounding. Being seen like this completely truthfully felt vulnerable, but also beautiful. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Orders surged. Women from different towns sent pictures requesting custom-made outfits. Fashion enthusiasts shared her designs online. Someone even created a hashtag number, Emma Zuri style. And when Madame Nkechi invited investors to a private viewing of Zuri's sketches and sample dresses, they were stunned. One investor, a powerful businesswoman named Adaora Nwokedi, studied the designs carefully. This girl, Adaora, said designs from the soul. I want to mentor her and fund whatever she needs. Zuri nearly fainted. That night, after everyone else had slept, she crept outside and stood beneath the moon, letting the cool air wash over her skin. She looked up at the sky, her voice trembling. Mama, I'm doing it. I'm really doing it. Her dreams were no longer buried beneath cruelty. They were alive, bright, and stretching far into the future. But while she embraced her growing power across town in the deteriorating Bacoma mansion, Boma sat in darkness with unpaid bills, scattered across the table drinking cheap liquor. His world was collapsing. And he didn't yet know that the woman he once forced to crawl, the woman he tried to break, had risen into the world he thought he owned. But very soon, he would. The Bacoma estate, once the pride of the village, had become a decaying shadow of its former glory. Paint peeled from the once flawless walls. The garden, once perfectly manicured, now grew wild with weeds. Cracked windows rattled with every gust of wind. It was a mansion built on arrogance, and arrogance had finally begun to collapse. Inside, Boma Bacoma sat hunched over the dining table, surrounded by unpaid bills, eviction threats, and letters from banks demanding repayment. His expensive wristwatch, once a symbol of his inflated pride, now felt like a shackle. He had sold most of his cars. The household staff had long since resigned, leaving only Mama Deka and Boma alone in the cavernous home. He slammed a fist onto the table. How can everything go wrong so quickly? Because you're cursed, Mama Deka muttered from across the room, wrapped in a blanket and coughing weakly. Your father warned you years ago, never mistreat your wife, or the ancestors will close your gates. Enough with that nonsense, Boma snapped. This has nothing to do with ancestors. My business partner betrayed me. Investors backed out. Contracts failed. How is that my fault? Mama Deka's eyes flashed. Perhaps it is the fault of the young woman you chased out in the storm. A pregnant woman thrown out like garbage. Did you think the spirits would remain silent? Boma stood abruptly, pacing the room. Zuri ran away. She abandoned this home. Yes, Mama Deka said with a bitter laugh. Because you crushed her spirit. And now look at us crushed in return. Don't speak to me like that, Boma growled, though his voice wavered. But deep down he knew she was right. Ever since Zuri vanished, a strange series of misfortunes had followed. Clients who once praised Boma suddenly turned their backs. A land deal fell apart overnight. Then a corruption investigation froze several of his accounts. Suppliers abandoned him. Investors evaporated like smoke. Everything he touched crumbled. Mama Decca coughed again, her illness worsening. Medicine was expensive and their savings were thinning dangerously. "When will the curse end?" she whispered, trembling. Boma sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. "When we find her," he murmured. He didn't care about reconciliation. He wanted control, possession, dominance. The idea that she had escaped him gnawed at his pride like a wound that refused to heal. The thought of her living freely somewhere enraged him. He hired private investigators. He drove to villages and towns asking questions, but he found nothing. It was as if she had vanished into the earth. One afternoon, while wandering through the market disguised in plain clothes, he overheard a conversation that chilled him. A group of women stood near a stall displaying bright, beautiful dresses. "Did you hear?" one woman said excitedly. "That boutique across town is selling designs from a new fashion talent, M.A. Zuri Designs." "Yes," another woman chimed in. "They say the seamstress is brilliant. Her stitching is perfect and her patterns are heavenly. And she doesn't even have a shop yet. They say she works from home." "Imagine the skill." "Women are already placing orders months in advance," the first woman added. "If she keeps going like this, she'll be richer than half the men in the city." Boma froze. Mama Zuri, his mind flashed instantly to his wife. It couldn't be her. Impossible. Zuri was weak, poor. She had no business sense, no talent, no courage. She couldn't even speak confidently without trembling. How could she become someone admired, celebrated? But the name stung him like a slap. Zuri. He clenched his jaw. "What kind of name is that?" he demanded, suddenly stepping toward the women. They looked startled. "Why are you asking?" one replied cautiously. "I want to know who this Zuri is." The women exchanged glances. "She's private," one finally said. "No one has seen her face, but they say she's blessed, that she overcame hardships, that she creates beauty from pain." Boma's mouth went dry. Beauty from pain. Pain he caused. He stormed away without another word. His heart pounded wildly. Was it her? Could it truly be her? The woman he threw out like trash? The woman he forced to crawl at 9 months pregnant? No. He refused to believe she could rise. She didn't have the strength. But doubt crept in like a whisper. By the time he returned home, Mama Decca was sitting in the living room, clutching her chest, struggling to breathe. "We need money for medicine," she gasped. "There is no money," he snapped. "Not until I find Zuri." Her eyes widened. "You think she can help us?" "No," he said coldly. "But she owes us. She owes me." Mama Decca hesitated. "If she is doing well, perhaps we should humble ourselves." "Apologize." "Never," Boma hissed. "I just need to bring her back. Once she returns, everything will fall into place." Mama Decca looked at him with fear. She had always supported his pride, had nurtured it, fed it, encouraged his control. But now she saw its full monstrosity. "You did not marry a slave," she whispered. "You married a human being." Boma glared at her with red, furious eyes. Enough. But Mama Decca saw something in him that chilled her, the desperation of a man watching his empire crumble. A man who believed his wife's return would restore his fading power. Meanwhile, far across town, Zuri didn't know the storm approaching her. She spent her days preparing designs for Ada Ora, the powerful businesswoman who had taken interest in her work. Ada Ora was fierce, intelligent, and generous, exactly the kind of mentor Zuri had never dreamed of. On the day they met in person, Ada Ora examined Zuri's samples with intense focus. "These aren't just clothes," Ada Ora finally said. "These are stories. Emotion stitched into fabric." Zuri's heart fluttered. "Thank you, ma'am." "Call me Ada Ora," the woman said with a warm smile. "And I want to help bring your brand to life," Zuri gasped. "Truly." "Yes. You remind me of myself years ago, hungry, talented, and underestimated. I will not let talent like yours go unseen." Tears filled Zuri's eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." "Thank me by working hard," Ada Ora said. "And by believing you deserve this." That night, as Zuri sat in her room feeding her babies, she felt something powerful stirring inside her. She was rising, she was building, she was healing. But as she rocked her children to sleep, a quiet unease tugged at her heart. As if her past, though fading, had not fully released its grip. She didn't yet know that at the same hour Boma stood outside Madame Nkechi's boutique, watching through the glass as customers admired her designs. His fists clenched, his pride burned, and his dark vow echoed through the empty street. "I will find you, Zuri, and when I do, you will come home." He didn't know that the woman he once broke was no longer powerless. He didn't know she had become someone bigger than anything he could control. But soon, very soon, he would. The weeks that followed were some of the busiest and most transformative of Zuri's life. Adeora moved quickly with the decisiveness of a woman who had built empires and recognized raw talent when she saw it. She arranged a workspace for Zuri in a shared studio used by several designers, a bright, spacious room filled with sewing machines, mannequins, rolls of fabric, and sunlight. It was nothing like the dark corners where Zuri once hid her tears. This place breathed creativity and possibility. You will work here 3 times a week, Adeora instructed. Uchechi can assist you from home with smaller tasks. I will handle the business and marketing sides for now. Zuri felt overwhelmed by the generosity. Ma! Adeora! I don't deserve all this. Adeora fixed her with a sharp, knowing look. Never say that again. Deserving has nothing to do with luck. You earn your place with talent and effort. And you have both. Zuri lowered her head, tears threatening her eyes. It still felt strange being believed in, being supported, being seen. With the triplets growing more active by the day, Zuri balanced her responsibilities with careful planning. In the studio, she sketched new designs with newfound confidence. At home, she nursed her babies, played with them on the floor, and watched their personalities bloom. Ngozi was curious, always trying to crawl toward anything shiny. Amarachi giggled easily, her tiny laughter filling the house like a melody. Chibuike was the calm one, observing everything with quiet intensity. Sometimes while watching them sleep, Zuri whispered to them, "Everything I'm building, it's for you." She meant every word. One morning as she prepared to leave for the studio, Chinedu stepped out of the kitchen holding a lunchbox. "This is for you," he said. Zuri blinked. "You cooked for me, I tried," he said, slightly embarrassed. "It may not taste the best, but sewing all day means you forget meals." She laughed softly. "Thank you. You've helped so much. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay me," he replied gently. Then with a hesitant breath he added, "Seeing you grow is enough." Their eyes met for a moment too long, warm, intense, filled with silent understanding. Zuri's heart fluttered, but she quickly looked away, unsure if she was ready for anything more than gratitude. Chinedu respected the space between them, never pushing, always steady. At the studio, Zuri threw herself into her work. Adeora introduced her to high-quality fabrics she had never touched before. Silks, brocades, chiffon, hand-woven textiles from different regions. Zuri's fingers trembled the first time she handled them. "These are expensive," Zuri whispered. "Yes," Adeora said, "because you are worth expensive things." Those simple words echoed in Zuri's mind for days. With every design she created, Zuri felt pieces of her old self falling away, the fear, the hesitation, the smallness forced upon her by Boma's cruelty. In their place grew certainty, ambition, and something she once believed she lost forever: dignity. But while she blossomed, the Bokoma estate continued its descent into ruin. One evening, as storm clouds gathered over the crumbling mansion, Boma paced his office like a caged animal. Letters of debt lay scattered across the floor. Mama Deka lay weak in her bed, her voice barely more than a whisper these days. "Have you found her?" she croaked when Boma entered her room. "No," he muttered, anger simmering in his voice. "But I have a lead." He didn't mention he had been following Madame Nkechi for weeks, observing the boutique, watching the mysterious dresses that bore the name Emma Zuri Designs. He had seen customers flocking. He had overheard women praising the designer's skill. He had even approached Nkechi once, but she refused to reveal the identity of her designer. "The girl wants privacy," she had snapped at him. "Respect that. Private, successful, talented." It made no sense. His Zuri had been obedient, quiet, passive. She wasn't capable of any of this, and yet the name was too pointed, too familiar to dismiss. The dresses, though modern, had a softness, a precision, a quiet elegance that reminded him of her delicate touch. A memory flickered of the night she had embroidered a handkerchief for him early in their marriage, before he turned cruel. Her stitches had been perfect even then. He couldn't shake the suspicion, and now he would confirm it. At the studio, life continued with increasing momentum. Adeora arranged a small private showcase for influential women across the city, socialites, business owners, politicians' wives. Zuri was terrified, but Adeora reassured her. "You will not speak," she said. "I will present your work. You just need to be present." The night of the event, Zuri wore a simple dress she had designed herself, elegant, fitted at the waist, flowing at the hem. Her hair was braided neatly. She held her hands together tightly, palms sweating, trying to remain calm. The guests arrived in glamorous outfits, their laughter echoing through the hall. They admired the mannequins draped in her pieces. They whispered excitedly. They asked questions. Ada Ora answered everything confidently. This collection is from a rising designer, she explained. Her brand is called Emma Azzurri. You will see her designs everywhere soon. When the applause came loud, strong, filled with admiration, Zuri felt her knees weaken. She had never been applauded before. She had never been praised. The emotion overwhelmed her, and she slipped out the back door to catch her breath. She stood alone under the moonlight, heart racing. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness but from the weight of the moment. She whispered, "Mama, are you seeing this? Am I making you proud?" A breeze brushed her cheek gently, and she took it as an answer. Just then, footsteps echoed behind her. She turned and froze. Boma stood a few feet away, staring at her with a mixture of disbelief, fury, and something darker. For a moment, everything inside her went silent. Her past, her trauma, the storm she escaped, it all rushed back like a punch to the chest. "Zuri," Boma said slowly, his voice cracking. "It is you." Zuri couldn't move. She felt her breath shorten her palms, sweat her heart pound violently. She didn't know how he found her. She didn't know what he wanted. But she knew one thing: she was no longer the woman he controlled. Boma stepped forward. "So this is where you've been hiding, while I suffered, while you abandoned your home." "While you stopped," Zuri whispered, stepping back. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried strength she didn't know she had. Boma's eyes widened at the unexpected resistance. You dare talk to me like that," he barked. Zuri swallowed hard, fighting the fear rising inside her. "Yes," she said, "because I am no longer yours." Boma lunged forward angrily. Before he could take another step, a voice boomed from behind him. "That's close enough." Chinedu appeared out of the shadows, his expression hard, his posture protective. He positioned himself between Zuri and Boma, his jaw tight. Boma glared. "Who are you?" "The man who will make sure you never harm her again." The tension crackled like lightning. Zuri trembled, but for the first time in her life she did not feel alone. She was surrounded by people who valued her, respected her, protected her. And as Boma's furious eyes darted between them, he realized something he had never expected. The woman he once broke had rebuilt herself into someone he could never again command, and the war for her future had only just begun. The tension in the air felt sharp enough to slice through skin. Zuri's pulse thudded painfully in her throat as Boma and Chinedu faced each other. She stood frozen, trembling, not from weakness, but from the sudden collision of her past and present. The man who once shattered her, standing before the man who helped her rebuild. Boma's eyes darted between them, confusion and disbelief, twisting across his face. He took a step closer, pointing accusingly at Zuri. "So this is your new life? Running away with another man while your husband suffers?" "I was never your wife," Zuri whispered, her voice trembling but steady. "Not truly. You made sure of that," he scoffed. "You're delusional. You belonged in my home. You were supposed to serve." "Enough," Chinedu growled, stepping forward. Boma glared at him. "And you, who do you think you are to intervene in my marriage?" Chinedu didn't flinch. "A witness to your cruelty, to her suffering, and now her protection." Zuri's breath caught. Those words wrapped around her like a shield. Boma's face reddened with anger. "You think you can just take what's mine? You think she can run a business parade around like some designer and humiliate me?" Zuri's voice broke in, shaking. "My success has nothing to do with you. You threw me out. You left me in the rain to die. You left my house," Boma snarled. "You abandoned your duty. My duty was to survive," she shot back. For the first time, Zuri saw a flicker of fear in Boma's eyes, not fear of losing her, but fear of losing control. The realization emboldened her. "You have no power over me anymore," she whispered. "Not over my life. Not over my children." At the mention of children, Boma stiffened. "Children?" His eyes narrowed. "Where are they?" Zuri stepped back instinctively. "They're mine, and you will not go near them." "They're my blood," he hissed. "I have a right. You lost every right the night you threw a pregnant woman onto the ground," Chinedu snapped. Boma turned to him, rage boiling. "Stay out of this." "I won't," Chinedu said. "Not when she's finally free." Before the confrontation could escalate, Adora stepped out of the event hall, her presence commanding. "Is there a problem here?" She looked between the three, her sharp gaze assessing the situation instantly. "There's no problem," Boma said quickly. "I'm here for my wife." "No," Zuri said firmly. "I'm not your wife." Adeora crossed her arms. Young man, this is a professional event. If you cause trouble, I will have security remove you. Do you know who I am? Boma barked. I'm no one important here, Adiora cut in. Leave. He opened his mouth to argue, but Adiora had already gestured to two security guards. They approached with firm expressions. Boma hesitated, caught between pride and fear. This isn't over, he muttered. Zuri, we will talk again. He pointed at her as he backed away. I'll find you. Then he turned sharply and stormed off, disappearing into the crowd. When he was finally gone, Zuri's legs gave out beneath her. Chinedu caught her before she fell. Easy, he murmured. Adiora knelt beside them, her face filled with concern. Are you hurt? Zuri shook her head, tears spilling. I didn't expect him to find me. Adiora placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You are safe here. We will make sure of it. Chinedu helped her to a quiet bench behind the hall. Zuri buried her face in her hands, shaking uncontrollably. He's angry, she whispered. He won't stop. He'll try to take the children. He'll destroy everything. Chinedu knelt before her, lifting her chin gently. Look at me, Zuri. She hesitated, then met his eyes, steady, calm, protective. You're not the woman he controlled anymore. You're not alone. You have Miu Chechi and now Adiora. And most importantly, you have yourself. Tears welled again. I'm scared. I know, he said softly. But fear is different now. Before it kept you trapped. Now it pushes you forward. Adiora approached, her voice firm. Zuri, listen to me. Men like him thrive on silence, on your fear. But you are a rising designer now. You have witnesses, support, and a reputation growing stronger every day. If he tries to harm you, I will use every resource I have to crush him. The intensity in Adiora's voice sent a shiver through Zuri. You're not just creating dresses, Adiora continued. You're building power. And power is something he cannot take from you. Zuri wiped her tears, breathing deeply. Thank you. Both of you. But inside, a part of her still trembled. Not from weakness, but from recognizing the storm ahead. When she returned home that night, she found the triplets sleeping peacefully, their tiny chests rising and falling with innocent calm. The sight of them warmed her heart and pierced it at the same time. She whispered to them, I will protect you. I will not let him hurt you, ever. The next day, the news of the boutique showcase spread like wildfire. Several investors reached out. Orders skyrocketed. Fashion blogs praised her taste. Ma Zuri Designs became a growing name whispered with excitement. But with every success came one growing shadow. Across town, Boma sat alone in the dark, replaying the encounter in his mind. The humiliation, the rejection, the fact that she had dared to stand before him and deny him. His pride screamed. She thinks she can escape me, he muttered. His gaze fell on a photo from years ago, Zuri smiling shyly on their wedding day. He clenched it in his fist, crumpling the image. No, he said through clenched teeth. She belongs with me. Those children belong with me. He slammed the desk. She owes me her life. But what Boma failed to see, what he would soon learn, is that Zuri no longer owed him anything. Her life was hers now, and she was ready to fight for it. Later that week, Zuri sat in the studio working on her new collection. She traced the lines of a flowing gown, imagining how it would look on a mannequin. The soft hum of creativity surrounded her. Then her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. 4 words that turned her blood to ice. I found the babies. Zuri's heart stopped. Her hands trembled. Fear swallowed her whole, and she knew the storm had arrived. The message sat on Zuri's phone screen like a blade pressed against her throat. I found the babies. Her fingers went numb. The studio walls felt as though they were closing in, trapping her inside her own terror. For several seconds she couldn't breathe, couldn't blink, could only stare at the 4 words that threatened to shatter the life she had so carefully rebuilt. Her heart hammered violently as her mind began to spiral. The babies, my babies, he found them. He's going after them. He knows where they are. He's watching them. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself as panic surged through her chest like a tidal wave. Her breath broke into gasps. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. Zuri, a voice called. She turned sharply. Adiora was walking toward her brow, furrowed with concern. What happened? Adiora asked, seeing the terror etched across her face. Zuri couldn't speak. Her throat felt locked. She simply handed Adiora the phone with trembling fingers. Adiora read the message, and her eyes hardened instantly. Sharp, cold, dangerous. Who sent this? She demanded. I don't know, Zuri whispered. No name, no number I recognize. Adara held the phone tightly. This is meant to scare you, to destabilize you, to disrupt your focus, your progress, your success. But what if it's real? Zuri's voice cracked. What if he found them? What if he's near the house? What if he stopped Adaora, ordered firmly. We don't assume the worst, we confirm the truth. She immediately called Chinedu. The call connected within seconds. What's wrong? He asked, sensing the tension in her voice. There's a threat, Adaora said. Someone claimed to have found the babies. Are they safe? Zuri leaned closer, scarcely breathing. Yes, Chinedu replied without hesitation. They're all here. Sleeping. I'm in the living room. Uchechi is here too. No one has come by. Zuri collapsed into a chair, her heart pounding with relief and dread at the same time. Are you sure? She whispered into the phone. I'm absolutely sure, Chinedu said. Zuri breathed. The babies are safe. Nothing will happen to them. She pressed a hand against her chest, trying to slow her racing heartbeat. Adaora took control. Chinedu, double the security on the house. I'll send guards from my company. No one goes in or out unless Zuri approves. I'm on it, he said. Zuri, please stay where you are until I get there. When the call ended, Adaora knelt in front of Zuri, gripping her hands. Listen to me, she said. Fear is a weapon. He wants you to crumble. But we will not let him win. Zuri shook her head, sobbing quietly. He won't stop. He wants the babies. He thinks everything belongs to him. He'll destroy everything, and we will destroy him first if we must, Adaora said, with cold conviction. Zuri stared at her through tears. Adaora's strength was like steel, unbending, unwavering. It steadied her, if only slightly. We move smartly from here, Adaora continued. This message was anonymous. That means he doesn't know your exact location. He's guessing. He's trying to intimidate you. But he found me last night, Zuri whispered. What if he followed me? What if a hand landed gently on her shoulder? Chinedu. He had rushed to the studio, breathing hard worry written all over his face. When he saw her, he hurried to her side. It's okay, he murmured, kneeling beside her. I'm here. The moment she saw him, her fear broke like a dam. She threw herself into his arms, trembling uncontrollably. He held her tightly, one hand on her back, the other cradling her head as if shielding her from the world. I thought he took them, she gasped. I thought. You're safe, he whispered. They're safe. I promise you nothing will happen to them. Not while I'm breathing. His certainty steadied her, anchoring her to reality. Adaora stepped back, giving them space, but her eyes stayed sharp, calculating the next steps. When Zuri's breathing finally steadied, Chinedu pulled back slightly to look at her. You're stronger than fear, Zuri. Don't let him drag you back into the darkness. Zuri wiped her tears, though her body still trembled. I don't know how much more I can take. You don't have to face it alone, he said softly. Not anymore. Adaora cleared her throat. We need a plan. She paced the room with the authority of someone who had handled far more dangerous men in her lifetime. First, Adaora said, we will track the source of that message. I know cyber specialists who can trace this number. Zuri nodded weakly. Second, Adaora continued, we bring everything into the light. Fear thrives in shadows. But if we expose what he did, what he is, then he loses all power over you. Zuri's eyes widened in panic. Expose him. How Chinedu spoke gently. Zuri, I've been thinking, maybe it's time to file a report. Legally. Document the abuse, the mistreatment, the danger. Zuri's heart pounded again. Police Court Boma will go mad. Let him, Adaora said firmly. Let the world see who he truly is. But the scandal will destroy him, Adaora said. Not you. Zuri's hands shook. I don't want to relive those memories. You won't be alone, Chinedu assured her. I'll be there every step. Tears threatened once more. She inhaled sharply. And the babies, will they be safe? They will have guards, Adaora said. Round the clock. Zuri hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. Relief washed over Chinedu's face. But the danger wasn't over. That night after the babies fell asleep, Zuri sat by their crib. She ran her fingers gently over their tiny hands, whispering prayers for protection. Chinedu leaned against the doorway, watching her. You don't have to be strong all the time, he murmured. Zuri turned to him, her eyes glistening. I'm doing this for them. I know. She took a shaky breath. Chinedu. What if he tries to take them? He won't, he said firmly. He will never touch them. Or you. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the depth of his promise. It warmed her, soothed her, scared her. You've done so much for me, she said, before I even understood why. Chinedu stepped closer, his voice soft but steady. I didn't help you to earn anything from you. I helped you because you deserved help. Because you deserved kindness. Because... He hesitated, then continued. Because the first night I saw you calling out in the rain, something in me knew I was meant to protect you. Zuri's heart fluttered painfully. She looked away, overwhelmed by everything happening inside her. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Her breath caught. Another message. But this time it wasn't a threat. It was a photo. A photo taken in the dark. A photo of the Bacoma estate, its gates wide open, lights off, windows shattered, the house falling apart. Underneath it, you abandoned your home. Now look at what's left. Zuri stared at the image, her fear replaced by something new. Anger. Finally, the truth pierced through the terror. He wasn't powerful. He was desperate, broken, crumbing. His threats were cries for control slipping through his fingers. She lifted her chin. He's falling apart, she whispered. Yes, Chinedu said. And you're rising. Zuri looked at her sleeping babies. No, she corrected softly. We're rising. And for the first time since her escape, she believed it. Zuri didn't sleep that night. She lay awake beside the triplets, listening to the quiet rhythm of their breaths. Her mind churned with images of the crumbling Bacoma estate, Boma's furious eyes, the threats, the fear, and the truth she had just begun to grasp. He wasn't invincible. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't the monster who once owned her life. He was a man drowning in the ruins of his own cruelty. By dawn, a quiet resolve settled in her chest. She looked at her children and whispered, I will protect you. I will not run again. She meant it. When Chinedu entered the room, carrying breakfast, he paused, noticing the change in her eyes. You didn't sleep, he said gently. I couldn't, she replied, but I know what I must do today. He set the tray down carefully, then sat beside her. Tell me, Zuri took a deep breath. I want to report everything. The abuse, the night he threw me out, the threats, all of it. I'm done letting him control my fear. Chinedu's expression softened with pride. I'm with you, always. Her heart fluttered not from fear, but from a warmth she was almost afraid to feel. Later that morning, Zuri, Chinedu, and Adaora arrived at the family protection unit of a nearby police station. The waiting room was quiet, the walls covered in posters, encouraging domestic violence survivors to speak up. Zuri's hands trembled as she filled out the report form. Name Zuri Ifunanya Bacoma. Her pen froze at the last name, a name she no longer wanted. When she hesitated, the officer spoke kindly. If you want to remove that surname, we can begin the process. Tears pricked her eyes. Yes, please. With each line she wrote, she felt pieces of the invisible chains lift from her shoulders. She documented everything, every insult, every slap, every humiliation, every night. She cried alone every time she prayed for escape. When she described the night he forced her onto the floor, heavily pregnant tears rolled freely down her cheeks. It wasn't just one moment, she whispered. It was years of believing I deserved nothing. Chinedu gently squeezed her shoulder. One of the female officers listened, then said softly, You are brave. What happened to you is not your shame, it's his. Zuri inhaled shakily. I want protection for my children. You will have it, the officer assured her. We will open a case immediately. He won't be able to come near you without consequences. When they left the station, Zuri felt emotionally drained, but a weight had been lifted. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She had spoken. She had taken back her voice. As they drove home, she noticed Chinedu watching her through the rearview mirror. What, she asked softly. You're different, he said. Stronger, I'm proud of you. She looked out the window, her heart warming. I didn't do it alone. His eyes softened. You did more than you think. At home, Zuri found Uchechi rocking the babies on the couch. Good news, Uchechi said brightly. They all took a long nap. Maybe they sensed something heavy lifting from your heart. Zuri smiled softly. Maybe. The home felt warmer than usual. Safe. Bright. And for the first time, she let herself feel it fully. That afternoon, Adaora arrived with more good news. The investors loved your sketches. They want to fund a small showroom for you. Zuri nearly dropped the stack of fabrics in her hands. A showroom, my own, yes, Adaora said. A starter space. It's modest, but it's a beginning. Tears filled Zuri's eyes. I don't know how to thank you. Adaora took her hands. Thank me by succeeding. By showing every woman who has ever been silenced that rising is possible. Zuri nodded, her chest tight with emotion. The next days were a whirlwind. They toured the available space, a small but elegant studio with big windows that let in golden sunlight. Zuri walked inside slowly, her footsteps echoing against the polished floors. She imagined mannequins wearing her designs. A sign above the door reading Mama Zuri Designs. Customers admiring her work. Her children playing in a corner while she sewed. It wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was becoming real. She ran her fingers along the empty wall and whispered, "Mama, I'm doing it." Adiora touched her shoulder. "We will sign the lease next week." But reality had a way of testing the brave. Just as they were leaving the building, a voice echoed down the hallway. "Well, well. Isn't this heartwarming?" Zuri froze. Boma stood at the end of the hall. His clothes were wrinkled, his face slightly gaunt from stress, but his eyes still held that venomous pride that once haunted her. Chinedu moved immediately, stepping between them. Adiora stood tall beside him. "How did you find this place?" Chinedu demanded. Boma smirked. "The world isn't so large. People talk. And I have ears everywhere." His gaze shifted to Zuri. "Look at you. Hiding behind other people, pretending to be strong. But you're still mine." "No," Zuri whispered. "I'm not," Boma scoffed. "You think filing a report changes anything? You're still my wife. Those children are still mine. And you still owe me. I owe you nothing," Zuri said louder this time. He took a step forward. Chinedu blocked him. "Your threats won't work anymore." Boma's eyes narrowed. "Do you think you can protect her forever? She's weak. She always has been." Zuri felt something inside her snap. Weak, she had carried Triplets through hell. She had rebuilt her life from ashes. She had created a brand with her bare hands. Weak was the last thing she was. She stepped out from behind Chinedu before anyone could stop her. "No, Boma," she said firmly. "I'm not weak. I survived you." Her voice echoed in the hallway. Boma's lips curled. "You're nothing without me." Zuri lifted her chin. "And yet look who's begging now." Boma's face twisted with rage. He lunged, but Adiora snapped her fingers, and 2 security guards appeared from around the corner, grabbing him before he could reach them. "Let go of me," Boma roared. "You will not harass my designer," Adiora said coldly. "One more stunt like this, and I will personally ensure you face charges." Boma struggled, but the guards forced him back. "This isn't over, Zuri," he shouted. "You can't hide behind these people." "I'm not hiding," Zuri said. "I'm rising." Boma's eyes blazed as the guards dragged him away. Zuri exhaled shakily. Her legs trembled. Chinedu rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly. "Yes." For the first time, yes. Adiora placed a steadying hand on her back. "Remember this moment, Zuri. Not because he tried to break you again, but because you didn't bend." Zuri wiped her tears, lifting her chin. She wasn't the woman he broke. She was the woman he never thought she could become. And she wasn't done rising. Not yet. The week leading up to the grand opening of Emma Zuri Designs felt like walking between 2 worlds, one of blossoming hope and the other of lingering shadows. While Zuri worked tirelessly preparing her first official collection, she couldn't forget the look in Boma's eyes when the guards dragged him away. Fury, desperation, possession, twisted into madness. She had stood up to him, but men like Boma didn't break easily. They thrashed. They clawed. They tried to reclaim the empire of fear they once commanded. Still, Zuri refused to let him steal another second of her life. With Adiora's guidance, the showroom was transformed into a breathtaking space. Soft cream walls made the bright Ankara fabrics pop like jewels. A polished wooden floor gleamed under the warm lighting. 3 mannequins stood proudly near the entrance, draped in Zuri's newest designs, a symbolic number she chose intentionally. 1 for each child. 1 for each chapter of her rebirth. 1 for each promise she made herself never to bow again. On the morning of the opening, Zuri stood in front of the mirror wearing one of her own creations, a flowing white and gold dress that wrapped around her like armor made of silk. Her braids were neatly arranged, her skin glowing with soft makeup. For once she saw the woman she had always wanted to be staring back at her. Strong, radiant, unbroken. Uchechi entered the room, holding one of the babies. "A queen," she whispered with admiration. "You look like a queen." Zuri smiled, though nerves fluttered deep inside. "I hope I don't faint in front of the guests." "You won't," Uchechi said. "You were born for this." Downstairs, Chinedu waited by the door, carrying 2 babies strapped securely to his chest in matching carriers. When he saw Zuri descend the stairs, he froze. His breath caught. "You look..." He struggled to find words. "You look like everything you overcame is wearing you like a crown." Her cheeks warmed. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, softness meeting, safety healing, meeting patience. There was something unspoken between them, something neither dared to claim yet. "We should go," she said, her voice gentle. "Yes," he replied, "let's go make history." The crowd outside the showroom surprised even Adeora. Customers, journalists, influencers, and curious onlookers lined up along the street, waiting eagerly. People held phones ready to take photos. Some carried shopping bags excited to purchase the new collection. A group of women even sang gently in celebration of a rising local designer. "Ma Zuri, beauty rises from struggle." Zuri's heart swelled. Inside, she lit a small candle at a corner table in honor of her mother. "This is for you," she whispered. "You planted the seeds I'm harvesting today." Adeora called everyone to gather near the ribbon. Zuri stepped forward, hands trembling slightly. "This is your moment," Adeora whispered. "Speak your truth." Zuri took a deep breath. She looked at the audience, women of all ages, men with pride in their eyes, children tugging on their mothers' dresses, camera lenses glinting. She found her voice. "For years, I believed I wasn't worthy of anything," she began. "Not love, not dreams, not dignity, but life. Life has a way of showing us that even from broken places, beauty can rise." The crowd murmured, softly touched. "I was once afraid to speak, afraid to be seen. But today I stand here to tell every woman who has ever felt small, every mother who has ever cried alone, that your story is not over." Tears filled her eyes. "You can rebuild. You can rise. You can be more than what tried to break you." Applause erupted. She lifted the scissors. Her hands steadied. "This," she said, "is the beginning of a new chapter." She cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. In that instant, the world felt wide, welcoming, and full of promise. Customers surged inside, admiring each piece with awe. Influencers snapped photos praising the craftsmanship online. Journalists approached Adeora for quotes. Sales began immediately. Zuri stood amid the buzz, overwhelmed. She felt someone take her hand. "Chinadu, you did it," he whispered. "No," she said softly, squeezing his hand. "We did. But peace is often fleeting when a storm refuses to die." Just as she began to settle into the glow of celebration, a familiar voice sliced through the air. "So this is what you've become," Zuri turned. The room fell silent. Boma stood at the entrance, disheveled, unkempt, desperate. Two security guards tried to block him, but he shoved past them. "You think you can run a business? You think you can parade around like some queen?" He pointed at her, shaking with rage. "You are my wife, Adeora," stepped forward like a lioness. "You need to leave." "No," Boma roared. "She belongs to me, and so do those children." People gasped. Zuri felt something inside her harden. She stepped out from behind Chinedu. "No," she said firmly. "I do not belong to you." "You're nothing without me," he spat. Zuri's voice rose, not in fear but in power. "I was nothing with you." Whispers spread through the crowd. Boma lunged forward, but Chinedu intercepted him, gripping his arm tightly. "Touch her," Chinedu growled, "and you will regret it." Security closed in. Adeora signaled to the police officers she had already stationed nearby. "You filed a report," Adeora told Zuri. "Now let the law work." Two officers stepped forward. "Mr. Boma Bacoma one announced you are under arrest for domestic abuse, harassment, and violating a restraining request." Boma's face twisted with panic. No, you can't arrest me. She's my wife, my property." "She is not property," the officer replied sharply. As they dragged him out, Boma screamed, "Zuri, I'll ruin you, The doors closed behind him, silencing his threats. And suddenly the showroom exhaled. The tension dissolved. Zuri stood still, trembling, but this time with release, not fear. Chinedu wrapped his arms around her gently. "It's over." She nodded slowly. "It's truly over." Adeora approached. "He cannot touch you anymore. The law will see to that." Zuri found her breath, her balance, her center. She looked around at the customers, the lights, the dresses, her children watching from their stroller. She felt free. For the first time in her adult life, she felt free. Later, when the crowd thinned and the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the windows, Zuri sat on a stool, exhausted but glowing. Chinedu approached her quietly. "Today," he said softly, "you stood taller than I've ever seen you." Zuri looked at him with gratitude. "You've been my strength." "No," he replied. "You were always strong. I just reminded you." She hesitated, then reached for his hand. "Chinedu, I don't know what the future holds. I'm still healing, still rebuilding." He squeezed her hand gently. "You don't need to know, one day at a time. I'll walk beside you, if you'll let me." Zuri's heart warmed. Yes, she whispered. I'd like that. She looked out at her showroom, her triumph, and whispered to herself. I rose. And she knew she would keep rising. For her children, for her mother's dream, for herself. She had walked through fire and emerged with wings. And this was only the beginning. Life is unpredictable. Pain can scorch your heart, betrayal can break your spirit, and suffering can silence your voice. But no matter how dark the world becomes, there is always a path waiting for you. A path built by courage, persistence, and the quiet decision to rise one more time. Zuri's journey reminds us that healing is not instant. It is a slow rebuilding of the soul. But when you find your strength, your voice, and your worth, nothing and no one can trap you again. You define your destiny, not your past, not your scars. And sometimes the people meant to walk with you will appear only after you choose to walk away from what hurts you. So stand tall, rise again. Your story isn't over. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. And if you enjoy powerful African cinematic folktales, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories.